Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Iron Bark podcast, and I am your host, Epion. Today, we're going to talk about a kangaroo on the loose in Canada, eels genetically altering other creatures' DNA, and fossilized prey found inside the stomach of a young tyrannosaur. On November 30th, a kangaroo had escaped from Oshawa Zoo and Fun Farm in Ontario, following which it spent 4 days at large. How it escaped? It leapt right over its handlers' heads. It just put its feet down and jumped for the stars. After that, random unconfirmed sightings and reports during that 4 day period. The temperature started to drop. We're in winter season now in Canada. People were concerned for its safety. There's also coyotes out there. I mean, kangaroos are pretty tough. I don't know. They could probably fight off coyotes, but maybe not a pack of them. And then eventually, after the 4 days at large, it was apprehended by police, but not until after the kangaroo managed to punch the cop in the face. So it was quite the rascal, and I don't know, at least it was still good enough. It was out there for a while, but it was still healthy enough to put up a fight after 4 days. So it must have been eating something and had lots of energy and holding up its own pretty well. But that's a good story with a happy ending. So I'm happy that's the outcome, that it was safe. It was brought back to the animal farm or zoo. A medical was done on it. It was a little tired and a little hungry, but it was given food, and it seems like it's healthy and safe and in good condition. So that's a win for everybody. Now I want to talk to you guys about a story involving fossils in Alberta. So a young species of tyrannosaur known as Gorgosaurus, I think that's how it's said, what was found to have the remains of another dinosaur, so bones, fossilized bone, within its belly. Now, this is the first time that this has ever been discovered within a tyrannosaur species. So, in the research paper involving this was the first time a tyrannosaur skeleton found with prey items preserved inside its stomach had ever been described. Young tyrannosaurs are actually quite rare to find, at least the remains are. Well, obviously, so a real one would be really hard to find as well. But their bones are fragile, they're younger, they're smaller. Over the course of time and a long period of time since the Cretaceous period, there's a lot of opportunity for those bones to get scattered, tossed away, destroyed by the elements, etc., and not really given the opportunity to fossilize. With that also being said, the fossils would also be delicate, so it's very, very rare to find a young tyrannosaur bones or remains, fossils. They're just incredibly likely to be destroyed along the way to being found. But nonetheless, this young tyrannosaur also had the remains of an even smaller dinosaur. It was a bird-like dinosaur, very small. Uh, I don't know how it's pronounced. As cetipes. I'm gonna call it cetipes. These little cetipede dinosaurs. It was, those little bird-like small things. Anyway, its hind legs, and I guess what they're thinking is that the tyrannosaur probably just ate the legs off of these little animals because it's the meatiest parts, and it just took them because, okay, these have the meat on them. I'm just gonna gulp these up. They didn't find the remains of the rest of the animal. I mean, you could speculate that maybe those remains were dissolved because maybe they were thinner bones or whatever. But nonetheless, without too much speculation or looking into it, it's a pretty cool example of the first time finding fossilized remains inside the belly of a tyrannosaur. That's pretty awesome. And I really like that it was found in the Alberta Badlands because Alberta has such a good connection with the mountains, nature, wildlife, and I love how it also has the Badlands in the south of the province, where it has like this connection to the very ancient past or very ancient nature, and it's just super cool how it has both present and past connections to nature and wildlife. Now I want to talk to you about something that I find particularly interesting and very intriguing. Is that eels genetically alter other creatures' DNA. So I'm going to do some reading from an article that I found that I find sums up exactly what I would like to explain or say, or at least tell you guys about this in a much more educated way than I could ever do it. But essentially, the findings suggest that electric eels and other electric generating organisms could affect genetic modification in nature. In the lab setting, electroporation involves the application of an electric field to cells to increase the permeability of the cell membrane. That means how easy you can penetrate the cell. which allows foreign DNA to be introduced. This may also allow chemicals, drugs, electrode arrays, or DNA to be introduced into the cell as well. So that's what you see in a laboratory. That's what we do with it. This is also known as electropermeabilization or electrotransfer, and I prefer the word electrotransfer because it's much more simpler to say and far less syllables. Now, to go a bit more in depth regarding this, I'm going to read from sections from an article from Science Daily. I might also paraphrase a bit here, but I'm just going to get the key points and ideas across the most effective way, quickest way possible, so you don't listen to me blowing too much hot air. I'll blow hot air after the article, and I'll start speculating on things. So there was a research group in Japan, and they thought that if electricity flows in a river, it might affect the cells of nearby organisms. Cells can incorporate DNA fragments in water, known as environmental DNA. To test this, they exposed young fish in a laboratory to a DNA solution with a marker that glowed in the light to see if the zebrafish had taken the DNA. Then they introduced an electric eel and prompted it to bite a feeder to discharge electricity, so a feeder being the fish. According to the group, electroportation or electrotransfer is commonly viewed as a process only found in a laboratory, but they were not convinced. They had thought that electrotransfer might happen in nature. They realized that if electric eels in the Amazon River could well act as a power source, organisms living in the surrounding area could act as recipient cells, and environmental DNA fragments released into the water would become foreign genes, causing genetic recombination in the surrounding organisms because of the electric discharge. The researchers discovered that 5% of the larvae had markers showing gene transfer. This indicates that the discharge from the electric eel promoted gene transfer to the cells, even though eels have different shapes and a pulse of unstable voltage compared to machines usually involved in electrotransfer. Electric eels and other organisms that generate electricity could affect genetic modification in nature. Other studies have observed a similar phenomenon occurring with naturally occurring fields, such as lightning affecting nematodes and soil bacteria. The researchers here are very excited about the possibilities of electric field research in living organisms. They believe these effects are beyond the conventional wisdom we can understand. They also said they believe that attempts to discover new biological phenomena based on such unexpected and outside of the box ideas will enlighten the world about the complexities of living organisms and trigger breakthroughs in the future. That's the article from Science Daily, paraphrased, summarized by me. It's obviously written by them. I highly recommend checking it out and the research paper involving it. Now, if I'm going to break this down and dumb it down to how I understand it, basically what it means is you can use electricity to open up your cells to put something else in there, altering and changing your DNA. It's called electrotransfer. They do this in labs. Now, they also think it occurs in nature. Well, I guess it does occur in nature according to the paper, and they've seen it with electricity, lightning. They're seeing it with electric eels, which makes you think about things like evolution, the way things evolve, adaptation, and how maybe some random occurrences or random happenings of events have been crucial in the evolution of some species, and more specifically, maybe for humans. Now, there's a lot of theories about how the human brain grew so rapidly and became the most complex on the planet. So people often cite things like we began cooking food. It released more nutrients into the food that we could absorb, and then our brains grew bigger as a response to that. There's also the stoned ape theory, where they think people started experimenting with mushrooms and it opened up their brains in different ways. Now, what if there was some sort of exposure to lightning, or to a lesser extent, maybe an electric eel, or maybe some other extinct species that had electric properties and somehow integrated things into our DNA that caused our brains to grow larger and more complex over time. It's an interesting idea. It's kind of unorthodox and it's kind of out there, but it introduces a new thing to the table for possibilities. Some people even like to think, maybe aliens came here and they altered the DNA of the local primates with their DNA, and they made kind of like people to like farm gold and stuff like that. I don't know. There's all kinds of theories out there, and this is just, I like to say, this is probably maybe another more interesting one. And it's interesting to see, like, I wonder what else like it could be responsible for. That article kind of sums up the idea of it perfectly. It's just, who knows what the future could hold with studying this and how certain things evolved or the outcome was. I don't know. I think it's super cool. I hope they discover more stuff with that. I hope they were able to kind of piece together the past and how things evolved and future biology. Anyway, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Sorry that this episode was a little bit shorter than usual, but I think it was just kind of quick, hard, and to the points. And I think you got the information you wanted out of it and thought of it kind of interesting. Hopefully you got some things that were thought-provoking, interesting, kind of gave you thought experiments to think about in your head. If you have any ideas that you came up with by listening to me, feel free to share them in the comments from wherever you consume these podcasts. It is on YouTube, it is on X. Hope to hear from you, hope to read from you. Anyway, thanks guys. See you later.